If we focus on North Africa during the times of the Greeks, a couple things show up. One, that the entire region was black African, with some exceptions of people who were of Middle Eastern descent. After this, the Romans came in and brought in their population, leaving natives of Roman descent in that region. Then the Middle Easterners came and flooded the nations. This all happened in about 800 years. This is not to say that the people who are Arabs did not find themselves believing that they were natives to the region for good reason, because they fused with the original populations. But there is evidence, multiple evidence, that these people came recently. The first piece of evidence is the Romans. The Romans, who really wrote from, let's say, 100 BC to 300 AD, they did not write about the Garamantes who owned that region of Libya as if they were any other race. They called them Ethiopians. The Egyptian area was too called Ethiopia. And not only that, they described the inhabitants as being closely related to the people in the kingdom of Kush. Then you have the Negrita on the other side. These are the West Africans, Central Africans. And then you have the lower Ethiopians, which these are the people who would later be called Abyssinians. This strangling of nations is very important. And the reason why it's important is because remember, when most European and Middle Eastern scholars report about seeing black people, they do not report seeing uh, Bantu people. The people that they are reporting are Sudanese, North African, or Ethiopian. The days when they started reporting Bantu people was somewhere in 700 or 600 AD. That was the first time they report about them, ever seeing them. Whereas the Greeks, who traveled pretty far and wide, they did detail seeing West Africans and even seeing Central Africans. But even during the times of the Arabs, it was known that Sudanese people or black people, especially of those of the Kushite regions, were occupying Egypt. For example, we read the accounts which are reported respecting the Sea of the West are marvelous, particularly those regard the sea that washes and cultivates districts of Sudan. And as you can see, it's right, Negroes, because that's what Sudan means. And the extreme West, men who are possessed of an extensive knowledge of our globe say that the Abyssinians and Sudan occupy a country of 7 years' journey, that Egypt forms the 60th part of the country of Sudan, and that the country of Sudan forms only a small portion of the surface of the earth, the dimensions of which is 500 years' journey. One third of it is inhabited, one third is desert, and one third is covered with seas. The country of the Sudan borders on the most distant plains of the dominions of Idris ben Idris. The Idrisian dynasty, especially in the time that this book was written, is the red part. And as you can see, the extremities of Sudan stretched all the way through North Africa, Central Africa, from East Africa, from that area known as Sudan, discluding Abyssinia and discluding the Zanj region. And the reason why this is important is because remember, this is 1000 AD, just about. In this time frame, this area is still being called Sudan, and they even include Egypt, and they're calling it Sudan, the land of the black. But as you can see with this map, the brown representing 622 to 632 AD, the orange representing 632 to 661 AD, and the yellow representing 661 to 750 AD. This shows the expansion of the Muslims that was fast paced from 622 to 750 AD. They had conquered the entire North Africa and part of Spain. Egypt at the time was ruled by the Byzantines, and so the Muslims took the empire from them. It's not hard to imagine what the Muslims brought, especially if we consider the fact that the Muslims themselves, through multiple population exchange in Spain.
Cordoba was among the world's largest and most populous cities, with estimates suggesting a population of over 300,000 residents. The Moors were what Europeans called the Muslims who inhabited Islamic Iberia. Although medieval depictions of the Moors in Renaissance art depict them as being sub-Saharan African in phenotype, the genetic profile of the people who lived in Muslim Spain was varied, with some individuals being genetically indistinguishable from modern Spaniards today, whilst others having detectable levels of North African and even Arabian ancestry, indicating gene flow from the connected Muslim world at the time. In the
and also sub-Saharan African DNA has been found in Spain, and sub-Saharan Africans have been detected to have been in Spain and adjacent islands far before the Roman expansion into North Africa.
From a genetic perspective, the Moriscos, compared to modern Spaniards today, had higher levels of North African ancestry, comparable to modern Spaniards from the Canary Islands.
One thing we must keep in mind is that North Africans, no matter what color they were, have sub-Saharan African ancestry dating back thousands of years, as the Ibero-Mauritians that I've shown you guys, the DNA of the Ibero-Mauritians show that there was at least 30% at one time.
The oppression of the Morisco eventually sparked revolts, as Moriscos resisted cultural erasure and systemic persecution, until the Spanish monarchy, under the command of King Philip III, mandated the forced expulsion of all the Morisco population, involving an estimated 300,000 to 400,000 deportations. Most of these Morisco would settle in North Africa, especially in Morocco, and mostly in the northern cities including Tetuan, Chefchaouen, and Fez, which explains why many Moroccans in these regions score substantial components of Iberian ancestry.
This too would probably contribute to the lightening of the skin and the dwindling of the sub-Saharan African ancestry of these people.
Others would settle in the western portions of the Ottoman Empire, explaining why some Levantines, for example, have components of North African-related ancestry, and also why Sephardic Jews have historically had a presence in the region. Although the Reconquista initially began as a campaign to reclaim formerly Christian lands from Muslims, it evolved into a systematic effort to purge the Iberian Peninsula of its Muslim heritage, both culturally and genetically. Despite these efforts, the genetic imprint of the Moors is indelibly etched into the modern Spanish populace. Interestingly, North African ancestry in Iberia doesn't conform to a north-south gradient as one might expect, but rather exhibits an east-west pattern. The highest frequencies of North African admixture, excluding the Canary Islanders who have elevated levels of North African ancestry due to the indigenous Guanche people of the islands, are first found in Galicia and Portugal at around 13%.
It's important that we talk about the people of the Canary Islands because they show significant amounts of sub-Saharan African ancestry. They also show ancestry from the Middle East, or what they would say North Africa, and they show ancestry from Spain. This shows that these people weren't completely isolated from one another, them being found in one island in their DNA. And more than this is that the Canary Islanders had a civilization, and we find words or peoples who could, or were written about, who could speak languages outside of the Canary Islands, meaning that they had trade with other places and other lands. Wherever there are North Africans, sub-Saharans are sure to follow. And as you can see in this table, regarding mitochondrial DNA, maternal lineages are characterized in prevalence. North African lineages followed by Europeans, and finally, in a small percentage, by sub-Saharans. According to different studies, the percentages are as follows. As you can see in the second one, the sub-Saharan is 6.6%. The others displayed no percentage or very low percentages of sub-Saharan African ancestry, as you will see. A genome-wide data from 49 Guanche people, which is the people that he showed earlier, showed that they had 73% Moroccan late Neolithic, 6.9% Moroccan early Neolithic, 13.4% Germany Balbeka, and 6.4% Mota, which, if you don't know, Mota is that Black African ancestry. This Mota DNA is East African in origin, and it contributes to the E1B1 haplogroups, and the people of the Canary Islands have these haplogroups in spades, not to mention that North Africans have these, and they come from their African origin. The results from different variables, as the geographical isolation of the island, the adaptation to environment of its inhabitants, and historical mixture of pre-Hispanic populations of archaeopelagy coming from of Africa with European and sub-Saharan individuals, specifically estimated that the Canarian population at an autosomal level is 75% European, 22% North African, and 3% sub-Saharan African. This proves that the North African region, especially places like Spain, would have had some diversity.
This percentage noticeably diminishes as one moves eastward and northward, tapering off to nearly zero, with regions like the Basque Country showing undetectable levels of North African-related admixture. This distribution pattern is likely due to the fact that the Portuguese Inquisition, unlike the Spanish Inquisition, involved less expulsions, with greater emphasis on conversions. It's crucial to acknowledge that this history of genetic exchange between Iberia and North Africa predates the Islamic expansion. Nevertheless, distinctly, North African haplogroups such as EM81 are found highest in regions like Extremadura at around 16%. The highest percentage of EM81 in Europe is found among the Pasiegos at around 30%, an isolated community living in the mountains of Cantabria.
If we read about this EM81 DNA, the dominant subclade EM81 is thought to have originated in area of northwest of Africa 7,000 years ago, but all Y full members are M183 and have a TMRCA just 2,700 years ago. EM81 is the most common subclade of haplogroup EL19V257. It is concentrated in North Africa and is dominated by the EM18 subclade. EM18 is believed to have originated in Northwest Africa and has an estimated age of 2,284 to 2,984 years before present.
The influence of the Moors transcends beyond DNA, with over 4,000 words of Arabic origin firmly embedding themselves within the Spanish lexicon.
Now, consider what he just said, that the Arabic, rather than the Berber, was the one that's more influential, genetic and reality wise, in the Iberian Peninsula. The reason for this is because it was an Arabic Muslim invasion, and this is very understood. And this Arabic Muslim invasion, if it had such DNA consequences for a place like Iberia, what consequences did it have for the intermediate areas, the areas in between Iberia and Arabia?